Larry Kudlow says 4-ish. We could get 3. He's not worried about that. And we could even get a couple of quarters of 4, maybe even higher. You agree?
I think 4 is almost baked in the cake for the second quarter. There's a lot of stimulus in the pipeline, so I think it's a very sensible outlook that he's got for the next 6 to 9 months.
Is it sustainable?
It's not sustainable over the long term. They're going to have to turn to some very hard challenges. Number one, they're going to have to deliver on trade as a pro-growth part of their platform. We'll see if they can do that. They're going to have to deal with the budget deficit at some point, and they don't have much time. So there's some real challenges that are going to throw up big headwinds.
Greg, you know, in terms of the pro-growth part of the platform, Kudlow was talking about not just tax cuts 2.0, but potentially 3.0, 4.0, various iterations of pro-growth tax cuts down the line. I don't know what you think about in terms of what the likelihood is of these things being passed and what that could mean for the economy, given the headwind that the economy could face with tariffs, but then the tailwind with additional tax cuts.
Well, the low-hanging fruit in terms of pro-growth tax policy has already been harvested, and that was lowering the corporate rate, which we did last year. The tax reform 2.0 is really about making some of those original moves permanent, because some of them are right now expected to expire in 4 or 5 years. That's going to be tough from a parliamentary point of view, because it'll require budget instructions that have to maneuver past the very small margin Republicans have in the Senate. Beyond that, I just don't think that there's a lot of pro-growth juice left for this administration. At some point, they're going to have to confront the fact that they've blown deficits sky high. And to touch on the issue of growth and deficits, Larry said today, you know, we'll have high deficits for a year or two, but that's kind of the investment in the long term. Nobody disagrees with the White House that the tax cut gives you large deficits and strong growth in the short term. Where they disagree is that they don't buy the White House argument that we're going to have this fabulous 3% decade that wipes all the deficits away.
Hey, Doug, it's Guy. President Xi is president basically for the rest of his life. Is he in a position to play the long game in this and basically wait out the Trump administration, who again has to run in the next year and a half or so?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I've been worried about this for quite a while, and I thought that the most important thing that Larry Kudlow said this morning was to point the finger directly at President Xi for lack of progress with China. That had to be calculated. They sent him there to make that point. It's very consistent with this president's approach to things, which is to make things personal. And we'll see if it yields any kind of change in the Chinese posture. I think at this point there's no evidence that it will, but they clearly believe that they can get China to bend without help from the Europeans, without help from other allies. And that so far is a pretty risky strategy.
Yeah.
At the same time, Greg, the president just this morning, along with Larry Kudlow, both hinting that perhaps a trade deal with Mexico, smaller than China, of course, but much nearer in proximity, and actually when it comes to economic impact, maybe even more important.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. That's not the first time we've heard Mexico suggested as the first country to cut some sort of a significant deal. I think it's also noteworthy that they did not mention Canada in that reference. So it sounds like they're talking about writing a bilateral deal with Mexico and leaving the Canadians out, then using that Mexico model as deals with every other country. It's an interesting strategy, but look, it's a high-risk strategy. The whole theory of the administration's case is we're going to get really tough and hit these guys with tariffs, and they'll come back and bargain for something better. Maybe it'll work out. It's not working out yet. In the meantime, in some respects, it's backfiring. China, you said, okay, we'll lower our tariff on cars. How's that, Mr. President? That wasn't good enough. And we hit the Chinese with these tariffs. As a result, they raised tariffs on our car exports and lowered them on Europe. So right now, the trade war is helping European exporters and hurting American exporters.
Yeah, and China's also inking a bunch of deals to set up shop in terms of factories in Europe in the meantime, that we're witnessing that right now. But Doug, you know, what was interesting in Jim Cramer's interview with Kudlow is that, you know, he was sort of tracing Kudlow's progression over the years to more sort of the Peter Navarro side of things in terms of being a China hawk. At the same time, we sort of heard maybe that there's a limit to, you know, what we are all calling a severe trade dispute or trade war, whatever you want to call it. When Cramer said, would you go up to $500 billion in goods to be taxed? And he was like, no, not, you know, I'm not convinced we go that far. Have we seen the limits at least? I mean, isn't that a silver lining for the markets?
I think there's a point to be made there. I mean, look, what we keep hearing the White House saying is it's a good time to do this because the economy is very strong. that's an acknowledgement that this strategy is harming the economy at some level. If they escalate that much, there's going to be significant damage, because it's not just those tariffs. It's all of the feedback you get from around the globe with retaliation and deals being cut in other places. So I think there's a good reason to be concerned about that. I think the larger point, and I think Greg hinted at this, is this administration needs a win on trade. It needs a moment where this strategy pays off with a significant reduction in trade barriers. Mexico might be considered a big win, but that's really NAFTA losing.
You don't think the president thinks he's winning politically already? I think he thinks he's winning on trade. He thinks this is a winning strategy.
If they don't get a win, say they don't get Europeans coming saying we're going to lower some tariffs, and we only get retaliation and escalation, it will damage the economy and they will not win.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.